Arizona sun burns hot on the desert. The air is shimmering with excitement. It has been a winter of dreaming and a winter of designing. The fruits of the winter's labor are ready, but still silent. The first test is as tough as the desert is severe. Skilled hands have lovingly assembled what each hopes is the ultimate racing machine. The desert heat will test machine and man. Each driver has spent thousands of hours steeding himself, preparing mind and body for the test that lies ahead. The trial is a simple challenge of a Sunday afternoon drive, 200 miles in the blazing sun at Phoenix International Raceway. Soon, the awesome power of these thoroughbreds will answer the call. Each will sound its challenge in an ear-splitting scream, and the path ahead is difficult and filled with danger. A single miscalculation can end in disaster. The battle is constant and demanding, requiring tremendous skill to tame the lightning speeds, move at hundreds of miles an hour just inches apart. Danger and daring are commonplace as the 1989 season for the IndyCars is about to begin. The IndyCars of CART are ready to begin the fight once again, the yearly battle to determine the ultimate team, machine, and man. At the end of the season, the PPG Cup, the symbol of the champion of the CART PPG IndyCar World Series. Today, it's round one, the Auto Works 200 at Phoenix. Well, it's hot, sizzling hot, blistering hot, use any adjective you want. The record for this date previously was 95 degrees. The thermometer has soared through that 7 degrees ago and is in fact still climbing. A tremendous challenge for these drivers that face 200 miles of competition here in the desert. Hello, I'm Paul Page, and this is the first race in the 1989 IndyCar season. It takes us all the way through the year, and it takes us up to the Indianapolis 500. Today, the 200-miler here, and then a week from today, through the streets of Long Beach, California. Then early in May, it's the run for the pole, the first day of time trials at the Indianapolis 500. And then on the Memorial Day weekend, the great Indianapolis 500-mile race itself. And we'll continue to follow CART throughout the racing season. Now, here today, the story is one of changes. Now, over the winter, there have been a number of team changes. Bobby Rahal moved away from the only IndyCar team he's ever been with, True Sports, moved over to Maury Cranes and the Craco team. Michael Andretti from Craco to join his father at the Newman Haas stable. And Scott Pruitt, a part-time IndyCar driver in the past, has now joined the True Sports organization, replacing Rahal. And there are a number of new drivers that have joined the IndyCar ranks as well. Well, at Penske Racing, though, the drivers haven't changed. It's still Mears and Sullivan. Let's go down to Jack Arute.
And Paul, for the sixth time in 14 races, Team Penske has swept the front row for a CART PPG IndyCar event. Here at Phoenix, it's just another chapter in records that they wrote back in 1988. It looks like 1989 is going to be more of the same. But another factor that all the drivers will have to deal with today is this heat. Record-breaking temperatures here in Phoenix, above the 100-degree mark since Thursday. Again today, well above 100, as you said. But more importantly is the track temperature, which right now we're showing at almost 140 degrees plus. Now, 142 is the mark now. It's been fluctuating back and forth, and what that will do is it will grease the track up and have problems for a lot of the teams in terms of adhesion with the tires. But the heat for the driver is a factor that must be dealt with as well. And some of the drivers will be using a derivative of this skull cap here. And they have little capillaries that run through the skull cap back down into a cooling container that's inside the race car. Now, what they will do is they'll put that underneath their helmet, and that'll hopefully circulate that cold water throughout the 200-mile event and give these drivers a cooler head right to the checkered flag. Now, for more information from pit road, let's check in with Brian Hammonds.
Jack, starting right behind the Penske team is the surprise of the weekend. Dominic Dobson driving in his very first race here at Phoenix for a brand new IndyCar team. The Bayside Racing team has qualified third fastest. Now, this team doesn't have a Chevrolet. They don't have even a new Cosworth, but he's outqualified 6 former winners of this event. Now, 3 of the last 4 years, this event has given us a first career winner, the first time career win for a driver. Dominic Dobson is hoping that trend continues. Now, there's already been a lot of action on the track this weekend. For more on that, let's go back to Jack Arute.
Well, Brian, yesterday in the final practice session, there was a very scary moment as Tom Sneva hurtled into turn 1, and as he exited turn 2, he crashed very badly and blunted the rear end of his Granatelli racer. He was then, as you could see, he blew a hole through the concrete wall 18 inches in width. They removed him from the car, and then they had to take him by air ambulance to Good Samaritan Hospital. They gave him a CAT scan and checked to see if he had any sort of mild head injury. We're pleased to report, however, that he was released at 8:30 today, and he's somewhere here on the grounds, and he'll be watching the rest of the IndyCar brigade as they compete in this 200-mile contest. Another driver that had problems is right here, Emerson Fittipaldi. Yesterday, he brought his PC-18, a brand new car that he matched with his successful Chevrolet of last year, and he thought he was going to be a contender for the pole. But he crashed before qualifying and was forced to go to his backup car, this PC-17, which is just a tad slower. But it's not too slow, although he's mired in the middle of the grid. He's only 2/10 off the pace that he set in his primary machine. Paul?
Well, the fact is, at the front of the grid, nothing changes. It's again the Penske team, Bobby Unser. Can they be beaten?
Paul, if you listen to the racing people and the know-how, they're going to tell you it's two classes of racing, Roger Penske and the rest of the field. Now, this isn't going to turn out exactly like this because there's other guys running fast. Penske sold Patrick Penske cars. So Emerson Fittipaldi had the 18. He has the 17. It's a very fast car. He should be very competitive today. We've got Bobby Rahal in a Lola. You've got the Andretti family, Michael and Mario, and the Newman Haas team, as you mentioned. They should be very fast today. They haven't had the transmission problems that we all predicted that they would have. Then you've got Little of Al, of course, in the Gallus Lola, Chevrolet engine again. Now, the track as it gets hot today is really going to get slippery. It's going to get slipperier than it was last year when we were here, lots of times. It's just really hot. And then, most of all, when you see the green flag fall, there's just a whole bunch of guys that think they can win that race. And that's what we're all here for.
And that moment is not so very far away. In just a minute, we'll come back with a tour of this 1-mile track. And then it will be time for that famous command to start the engines for the first time in the 1989 season.
Sports Exclusive is brought to you by First Brands Corporation, makers of STP Son of a Gun Protected. By Budweiser, Beechwood Age for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. By Craftsman, people who depend on tools, depend on Craftsman. And by Thrifty Car Rental, priced for everyone at over 650 airport and suburban locations worldwide.
Well, the air is electric with excitement here. The drivers are strapped into their cars. Everyone is ready to go. So let's go now for a tour of the 1-mile oval at Phoenix International Raceway. The track at Phoenix is 1 mile around, measured 3.5 feet from the inside line. The turns, 11 degrees and 9 degrees, are very, very flat. The pits are located on the home stretch, along with the start-finish line. As the cars head to turn 1, they brake for the first and only time and brake while turning.
And they use left foot braking on oval tracks, Paul. Remember that. So they use the brake and throttle kind of together. There we go into the back straightaway, which is the dog leg. Very hard to pass there because the groove gets very narrow with the cars moving around. Into turn 3 and then through turn 4. Wide open all the way around there and back to the front of the starting line. Now here shows the car going in to turn 1. Goes way out wide, right down to the bottom. It drifts out right near the wall, right coming out of turn 2. Here's the dog leg, right down to the gravel, back out to the wall. That's what makes it hard there. Now they're wide open at turn 3, and this is where they get over 5 G's side lateral force. Back to the start-finish line.
And not only have the fans filled the grandstand, they're seated halfway up the hill here around the track. Well, their waiting now comes to an end. It is time for the first time in this year to give that most famous command. Let's go down to the main straightaway and Jack Arute.
And Paul, this is John Lacey, the Chief Executive Officer for Northern Automotive, and he will give that traditional command. Mr. Lacey?
Gentlemen, start your engines! Thank you. Nice. Have a good day.
Drivers are now ready to go racing. The engine started. We check up and down the line. All of the crews indicating that they're set. They're ready to go. Final moments of conversation. And Rick Mears sits ready to start this 200-mile Sunday afternoon run. Let's take a look at the starting grid. for the AutoWorks 200 at Phoenix. The pole is Rick Mears with a new track record, 6th pole in his last 9 oval races. Danny Sullivan is alongside his 7th consecutive front row start. Dominic Dobson is inside the second row. He's never finished in the top 10, but starts 3rd today. Mario Andretti is to the outside. He has 36 starts at Phoenix. He's won 3 times, including last year. Bobby Rahal on the inside, only active driver to win in each of his 7 IndyCar seasons. Al Unser Jr. has won 3 of his last 9 IndyCar races, looking for his first oval win. Michael Andretti, 4 of his 7 career victories have come on 1-mile ovals. Teo Fabi won here in 1983, his first start on the Phoenix Mile. Raul Boesel finished 5th here a year ago in his first ride with Team Shearson. Emerson Fittipaldi is driving a backup car after crashing his primary entry yesterday. Scott Brayton taking his first ride with owner Dick Simon. Arie Luyendyk led for 33 laps here last year until a pit fire ruined his victory bid. Pancho Carter, his first IndyCar start since '87. Kevin Kogan scored his first IndyCar win here in '86. John Jones, last year's Rookie of the Year. And Derek Daly beginning his 8th season in the IndyCars. Scott Pruitt, the IMSA and SCCA champion. And A.J. Foyt won the first race here at Phoenix. Randy Lewis with a new team this year. And Didier Thays starts with the Arciero team for the first time. Ludwig Heimrath won 2 Super V races here. Bernard Jourdain of Mexico. Jean-Pierre Frey starts today, first time on an oval. And Guido Dacco, a rookie here. Those are the men. One of the machines, that of Derek Daly, has not started, and the crew now rushing to push it back into position in the pits where they can start the car. The rest of the field already begins to roll past. If Daly gets it started before they get on the pace lap, he could, of course, move into his starting position. Otherwise, he would have to move to the back of the starting field. Derek remains strapped in the cockpit as the crew brings him around the edge of the wall for safety's sake. The rest of the field now begins to snake around the course. Very little need to heat up their tires. They're plenty hot already. The view is over the right shoulder of Mario Andretti as he works his way around the track. He will start in the 4th starting position, the outside of the 2nd row. You can see Danny Sullivan just ahead. That's Dominic Dobson just ahead to the left. He will pull up alongside with Mario as they come to the green flag, and Rick Mears is well out in front, chasing that PPG pace car. They move their way around the corner now. In single file formation, they'll drop back into a more familiar rolls of 2 in just a few moments. This is looking backwards from Bobby Rahal's car. The camera actually rides about 3 inches above the ground. That's Al Unser Jr. just behind. And this is one of the most spectacular shots that I think you'll find in motorsports. You've met the men. These are the machines, the breakdown of chassis and engine that will race here today as the field now moves into the first turn once again. Look at that grandstand looking backwards from Bobby Rahal's car, filled to capacity. Everyone now beginning to line up, but the kart officials are going to hold up the start of the race is one indication. Derek Daly's engine now started. This could be the reason for the hesitation from the officials. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, it was a simple vapor lock, the first indication that heat may indeed cause a problem. It kind of kept the fuel from a starvation situation. They cooled it down with cold, ice-cold towels, and then returned the engine, and it started right up. Back to you.
All right, the field formed up, but the starter, Nick Finaro, has indicated 1 more lap before he will give the green flag.
Paul, alcohol has a very low boiling point, and that's probably what happened to Derek Daly, is it just sits there and boils without a lot of heat. Even though we say it's a lot of heat, it shouldn't be a lot like gasoline, but alcohol boils.
All right, we look over Arie Luyendyk's right shoulder now, one of our onboard cameras here today. Ahead, new VIP suites that are part of the first turn. Everyone begins to settle just a bit. Actually, in a way, the extra lap is probably going to have a little calming effect. The guys get a little caught up the first race of the season. Now they've had even a further time to think about it, maybe settle down.
It always does, Paul. It's interesting to know as you watch Derek Daly,
Arie
Luyendyk car there, the different position that the drivers hold on the steering wheel with their hands. These cars are so narrow inside, they don't really have a lot of room for elbows and all. The cars are all getting lined back up now. The extra time is probably doing them good. They're all been worried about the heat today.
Looking back from Bobby Rahal, that's Michael Andretti, almost an identical car to his father, as the front row heads for the green flag now. Nick Finoro gives it, and the season has begun with Danny Sullivan, just like Indianapolis last year, coming to the lead. Mario Andretti comes out alongside Rick Mears to challenge Rick. Through the dog leg now. Rick holds his position in the fight for second place with Danny Sullivan leading. Now Rick drops back. Mario Andretti drops into second place, and then Rick Mears.
Well, that was a good start. Danny is getting better. Everybody says Danny is a road course racer only, but his oval track racing gotten so good, and that start is a good example of it. He knew it was going to happen, and he just let her rip, Paul.
So now we are underway in racing as Rick Mears begins his challenge. Michael and Mario running very close together in nearly identical cars now. Both cars out of the Newman Haas stable, both helmets identical. In fact, the scorers here said, will you make one of those cars number red and one of them black so that we can tell the difference as they approach the line? And Tyler Alexander, the team manager, they agreed to do that. So as you're watching, that car leading this little pack, running in second place right now with the red number is Mario, then comes Rick, and then comes son Michael.
You know, in spite of what people think in the Penske organization as far as team planning goes, Paul, on that start, it was Danny Sullivan actually got the jump on Rick. I don't believe those guys had any planning whatsoever. It was just totally a two-man contest. And, of course, we saw Mario right there in second place taking advantage and go right on by Rick also.
Every time someone would bring the idea of team racing up at Penske, they deny it thoroughly. Off of number 4 now. The battle is for second place. Rick Mears continues his pursuit of Mario Andretti. Now Rick darts just a little bit to the inside going into 1, but decides to lay back. Michael Andretti sitting back watching. Danny Sullivan leads this race, followed by Mario, then Rick Mears, then Michael Andretti, and Al Unser Jr. runs in 5th. We are live from Phoenix International Raceway, the Auto Works 200, watching the fight for second place. And to get an idea from this perspective how far ahead Danny Sullivan already is, now Rick Mears makes a move for second place, and in the first turn picks up second.
He's been sitting there testing Mario, trying to see where a weakness was going to be, Paul, and he decided that was going to be where it was. Now, we watched him try the pass, or an attempt at the pass over in turn 3. The car wasn't sticking good enough over there. And remember, they go into turn 3 wide open, they break going into turn 1. I'm sure that's the reason Rick picked that place to try his pass.
So the Penske team back running 1 and 2. The Newman Haas organization running 3 and 4 right now. And already Danny Sullivan is beginning to lap the field. He is well out in front as he comes around some of the back markers and works his way. There's Sullivan. He just came around Guido Dacco and now has other cars lying just ahead of him. The fight continues for second place, though, between Mario and Rick Mears. And you saw Mario a little puff at the back there.
Well, I don't know what that's caused from. We're going to have to watch that a couple of things. With Mario's luck the way he's had a couple of times, that was actually Michael, I think, Paul. And that's, but I think what luck that Mario's had here a few times, except for last year, of course, we would be surprised if anything happened.
One of the stories that we have to watch with those cars is the Lola cars is a concern over the gearboxes, as here comes Al Unser Jr. with a challenge.
I think what you'll see is when the cars leave the pits, most of them will leave it a lot easier than they used to because they think that this is where a lot of the damage is coming to the transmissions. What they did is they made the whole gearbox a lot smaller than it was, like, for example, last year. There's little Al.
On board with Al Unser Jr. That's Mario Andretti that lies just ahead. This is a battle for third place. Little Al's going to try him on the inside. And from this point of view, it looks like he's passed. What we don't know is where Mario is positioned. Mario's well back.
Now remember, these are both Lola Chevrolets, so that's really a contest of driver right there, Paul.
So Al Unser Jr. now moves up a position, getting around Mario Andretti. The Lola gearboxes then have come through some testing time in which they were felt to be fragile. Now, here comes a challenge as Mario continues to drop backwards. Teo Fabi, that's the Porsche, now moves around Mario Andretti.
Now, it shows that little puff of smoke a little while ago. Probably was something wrong with Mario's car because he's falling back a little bit too far from Mario.
Well, we have an opportunity to look at Fabi here in the Porsche entry. That's a Porsche-powered machine, a March chassis. This is the only really new development chassis out of March this year. They're concentrating their efforts on this car right now.
And remember another thing that's very significant to the Porsche car this year is they have hired 3 of Penske's very top people, or at least people that have either been with Penske recently, or like, for example, my chief mechanic from 1981, Laurie Garish, is with them now. So they have a whole new bunch of personnel.
Let's go down to the pits now and Brian Hammond.
Paul, the reason Mario is backsliding through the field is that he is down on turbo boost. So that's why you're seeing Mario starting to slip backwards. Paul?
Well, he continues to slip backwards as he falls now to the hands of Dominic Dodson. And there is Bobby Rahal right behind Mario Andretti and challenging as well. It's Danny Sullivan that is out in front, being chased by Rick Mears, Michael Andretti, Al Unser Jr., and Teo Fabi. We'll be back with more the Auto Works 200 in a moment. We're back at the Auto Works 200 at Phoenix International Raceway, 18 laps. So I've already gone into the record book. We are green flag racing the entire way with Danny Sullivan out in front and his Penske teammate Rick Mears just behind. Michael Andretti got an excellent start, moved up through the field, followed by Al Unser Jr. and Teo Fabi. Dominic Dodson now runs in sixth. Bobby Rahal, you see right there, has closed in behind Dominic Dodson, but Mario Andretti, the defending champion, has been suffering from some turbo boost problems and has dropped steadily backwards.
Well, that sometimes happens. You know, this heat sometimes, Paul, gets to the pop-off valves. The pop-off valves are the things the cart puts on top of the logs to keep the blower pressure equal with everybody. And they get very hot up there. You can see Michael's little air deal going through his helmet.
That's Bobby Rahal.
Or Rahal. You know, when they change teams, I have a hard time this year sometimes.
But that's Bobby Rahal now in those yellow and blue colors. There you see the air hose you were talking about.
Yeah, the air hose. That's where he gets the emergency air in case there's an accident or a fire, that he can breathe air. That's really whipping in the wind.
Well, they also are capable. They have a hose that positions its opening. It's just a regular piece of rubber hose that is positioned up at the pop-off valve. And if the pop-off valve starts to open up, they can hear a rush of air. And then they know to get back out of the throttle a little bit so it doesn't open up and bleed all their turbo boost.
Yes, and the air that's going by, Paul, is very hot. It's usually between 300 and 400 degrees in temperature, and it makes the valve that much hotter. So even if it opens just for a little bit, the guys have to back their boost down quickly so the thing doesn't overheat.
So Bobby Rahal currently runs in 7th place. Dominic Dodson is his target, lying just ahead. Dominic really with a terrific run here. He came, new team, they unload the car as we watch Danny Sullivan, the leader, who is still well out in front. Dodson really had a terrific day, no problems at all. Now Danny Sullivan, the leader of the race, his home is now out in Aspen, Colorado, where he enjoys the skiing, the snow. I've spent some time snowmobiling with him. We asked him about the lifestyle of Aspen, Colorado.
Racing's my whole life. I mean, I've got other interests, but everything is still geared and focused toward the racing. What makes me happy? About 2 feet of fresh snow. No, a good day, you know. I've got hobbies like everybody else. Some of them are business-oriented, some of them are sports-oriented, whether it's going skiing or, as we were talking, going scuba diving or playing golf or going and playing tennis or whatever. But I think still in a life like racing, you have to be so focused. Everything has to be so attentive toward that. But the other things are just, little buzzes, little highs. You're just doing that to kind of fill the gaps. But in the back of your mind, everything you're always thinking about is what's going to happen for next season. What do I have to do? What about the car? What about this? What about that? It's all racing oriented.
And you saw it. Rick Mears comes out and around his teammate Danny Sullivan quite easily, Bobby Unser, and picks up the lead.
In fact, it was so easy, Paul, it made Danny look like he was just sitting still or even trying to let Rick go by, which I'm not trying to say that's what happened. It's just that Rick is the king of the ovals. Rick is very fast. He was embarrassed over the start. That's obvious. Mario kind of held him up. He got way back for a long time. But, boy, is he on a roll now.
And it gives you an idea of how far this rush has carried them forward. That black car, number 7, directly in front of Rick Mears, is the 11th place car. The battle starts now for 2nd place. Danny Sullivan being challenged by young Michael Andretti. Michael has been in this fight right from the go.
Yes, he certainly has. To start off, it looked like Mario was going to be it at the first lap, but Michael has been pecking away, and he's hooked up just about as good as Rick Mears, it would look like.
Now it's a matter of how well you handle traffic. And here at Phoenix, the drivers say the lap feels like it's almost constant. Emerson Fittipaldi told me the other day, sometimes I'm not sure where I am in the race because the laps unreel so quickly. Bobby, how do you anticipate what's ahead of you and how to get past it?
Well, it's hard the first race of the season, Paul, because you don't know the personality of the drivers, and a lot of that has to do with what type of car they're driving this year. But in this particular case, like with young Michael moving up like he is, hey, he knows most of these drivers. He's been running with them for several years now. It's just do they remember the colors and everything like we do, or are they having the problems that we have? There's Michael right there.
And the yellow flag is out, and there's the situation. Dominic Dobson tagged another car, and his front wing has been damaged. So with the yellow out, some of the cars have already come into the pits, and Dominic has headed into the pits to try and get those wings repaired. Close competition here at Phoenix International. Rick Mears, the leader of the race, comes in, as does Danny Sullivan, who's running in second. Bobby Rahal, who picked up the lead, comes in. Michael Andretti, Mario Andretti, both anticipating stops. And Rick Mears rolls back out. All the stops so far appear to be routine, taking advantage of the yellow flag with 31 laps of competition complete. This one is certainly not routine.
Except, Paul, that a lot of the cars are taking on 3 and 4 cars. Now, here's a replay of the pass. Oh,
and simple. He was coming up on the back of Lewis, got right in there, tagged the back end, just was rolling much faster and didn't anticipate the positioning. Dominic Dobson, with what was a great run, has come to an end, at least for the moment, though they might be able to repair that. Dobson is out of the car. We'll be back with some more exclusive coverage of the AutoWorks 200 after this commercial and a word from our ABC station. We're back at the AutoWorks 200 in Phoenix, and Mario Andretti is out running. You're riding on board with him. Rick Mears is the leader of the race. Al Unser Jr. and Danny Sullivan follow behind Michael Andretti, then Teo Fabi, then Bobby Rahal, then Mario Andretti runs in 7th. We are under the yellow flag as a caution, but that is about to come to an end as the green flag flies as Mario works his way off of 4. Rick Mears acknowledges it with a boost of the throttle and is back and running once again. The yellow was 4. Dominic Dobson, who tagged the back end of another car. They have pulled that car to the side at the moment. Rick Mears out in front. Emerson Fittipaldi starts to work his way up through the field, challenging John Jones. Rick runs at the front.
He's really handling good. The heat really hasn't slowed the cars down very much yet. There's Rick going by, shot through it. All these cars are in front that Rick is passing now. We have to remember that those are there because of the pit stops. We just had a pit stop because of the Dominic Dobson minor accident, Paul.
And the team now confirms that not only were the wings were damaged, but there's other damage on the car. Let's get a further update from Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, we're here with Dominic. Dominic says high hopes going into this race. Exactly what happened?
Well, I came up on a slower car. It was a car that I had already lapped 3 prior times on the 25th lap of the race. He really shouldn't have been out there, but I came up on him and he slowed right down, started to move out. I did the best I could to get around him on the outside and just clipped his wheel. I don't think he even knew I was there. I slid up into the wall and bent the right rear suspension.
So he goes to Long Beach with high expectations that maybe when he gets on a road course, he can stay in a little bit longer than this time. He qualified so well, though, Paul Page.
He did look very, very good. We expect a great deal more out of Dominic Dobson. Rick Mears runs in the lead. The average speed of the race now, 128.5 miles an hour. Rick is about 3 seconds out in front of the second-place car, which is Al Unser Jr. Third place is Michael Andretti. Danny Sullivan has now dropped back all the way to 4th. Bobby Rahal is running up in 5th place.
Now we'll have to go a few laps because remember they're just out of a pit stop, and that's the reason the cars get all mixed up on the location on the racetrack. You just saw how close Rick comes to people when he passes to the other cars, Paul. Gives you an idea, but that's the reason they're mixed up now. And after a few laps, they'll all settle down and decide where they're going to be again. Camera will look the same as what we see.
Well, Rick Mears' luck on this particular oval hasn't been that good. This is his 13th run, and he has been a winner here only once, despite this being his 4th pole position. He was also the early leader here last year until he spun the car as he moves around Emerson Fittipaldi, who was running in 8th and puts Fittipaldi a lap down.
Now that's last year's Rick Mears' car. And so Rick just went around him with the new PC-18 versus the 17, just like Emma was just sitting still.
A reminder of the situation there. Emerson Fittipaldi has the new PC-18 available, but during the practice, he lost it, coming off at 2, tagged the wall. The car was damaged too badly to continue, so he had to go to the backup car, which is a last year PC-17, and that car belonged to Rick.
I talked to Pat Patrick yesterday, and he said the car was ruined. Now, whether he literally means that or not, I don't know, but it means it was damaged very bad. And, of course, with Long Beach next weekend, and Indianapolis not too far behind, that's really bad news for the Patrick team.
On board with Ari Leyendijk. That was Rick Mears that just rocketed around him and continues to work his way up through the field, though Al Unser Jr. remains stable at about 3.5 seconds back and continues to track the leader. Then Michael Andretti rides in 3rd place right now. So there's Al Unser Jr.
Now, Paul has been having a bit of a problem during practice. He's not been going as fast as they'd like to be going. They've been a little disheartened over there. But it's typical of Al Jr. Just as soon as he gets to the race, he just goes a whole lot faster than he does in practice.
Get an idea how rough the travel can be here. Al Unser Jr. looks over to check his right-hand mirror, but you can see how his head, especially in those corners, just getting pulled over and over. 5 G's, lateral G-force. The maximum amount of force that is exerted on a driver in the cars in one of these corners. Rick Mears, the leader of the race. And for the moment, now beginning to separate somewhat from Al Unser Jr.
If people want to compare G-forces, Paul, if they've been in an airplane, think of the worst bump that they probably ever hit is only 2.5 G's as a normal thing. Whereas these guys are pulling over 5 G's between 3 and 4 corners.
So the question for Rick Mears was, when you're racing, do you trust the body and how you're feeling about the car, or do you have to deal with it totally intellectually?
Well, I would say you've got to trust the body more so than the head a lot of times. You know, it's very easy to come back on yourself and check yourself, put the blame on yourself. And I mean, I've done it numerous times. You get out there and you're running the car and you're thinking, well, you know, we're off the pace. Maybe I'm just not doing this enough, or maybe I'm not just doing that enough. And sure enough, you're going to lean on a little bit harder and things just about bite you. And you get out of shape and you think, okay, you know, I should have listened. It was telling me that's all it wanted, and, you know, I overstepped it. So you really have to rely on that quite a bit. And you've got to be very careful the outside pressures don't rule that for you, too. You have to distinguish a lot of difference between what is your mind telling you, what is your body telling you, and what is everything outside telling you.
Well, Rick Mears is plying his trade with a skill that we've seen time and time again as he continues his lead here at Phoenix. Now, driver out of the race. Actually, a historic moment. Jackaroo.
Well, Paul Page, 25 years ago at Phoenix International Raceway in the inaugural event, this man went to victory lane. A.J. Foyt, you won't be going there today. What happened to your car?
Well, actually, it looked like we've been having trouble. It wasn't the car we was originally going to run. I sold the car we was going to run, and the headers all broke on it for some reason. I don't know. We're getting back and find out what happened to it.
He's one of the drivers, because of the concern about the 89 Lola gearboxes, that brought a 1987 Lola here, and you're going to bring an 87 Lola as well to Long Beach. Is that correct?
Well, that's true. We got the 89 car. We just got the rest of the pieces, so we might try to run it at Long Beach.
Well, he'll be at Long Beach going left and right there in the bay. Back to you.
And, of course, he will be at the Indianapolis 500. The incredible career of A.J. Foyt. 67 IndyCar victories, far and away more than anyone else has scored. Rick Mears out in front.
Paul, during the winter testing, all of the cars, including the Penske cars, have had some transmission problems. As the race goes on today, we want to keep watching and see, for example, Little Al, who's running only about 5 seconds behind Rick Mears, whether or not they're going to have these transmission problems.
The fight is for second place. Al Unser Jr. occupies it at the moment, but Michael Andretti now moves up and begins to challenge. That is Andretti, the white car on the right side of your screen. The blue and white car belongs to Al Unser Jr.
And again, both of them are Lola cars, and both of them are Chevrolet engines. The difference being is Michael is on what we call the Lola factory team. Little Al would be independent driving for Rick Gallus' team out of Albuquerque.
Now, Mike, the car jumped around a little bit on him there for a moment.
Well, it has to. When you get behind like that, you have a lot of wind buffeting. The car ahead causes a lot of turbulence, so the guy behind it sometimes just gets that.
There you see the leader, Rick Mears, as he passes out of view. We look for the second place car, and there it is, Al Unser Jr. Then the third place car right behind. Gives you an idea of how far ahead Rick is.
Now you can watch Michael there. He was gambling that he could catch Little Al behind some traffic and do a pass on him by Little Al being virtually blocked by a slower car. A lot of those deals like that are just gambles. The guys say, hey, it's easier to pass that way than it would be if I had to just pass it by myself on the track. So they just gamble on it, Paul.
Fight continues. You're on board with Al Unser Jr. He is second place. Michael Andretti sits just a bit back and trying to come up and challenge for second place. We take a look now at the top 10 with 55 laps complete. Mears, Unser Jr., Michael Andretti, Danny Sullivan, Bobby Rahal runs in 5th position. In 6th place is Teo Fabi, then Mario Andretti, who now seems to have stabilized in his position but 1 lap back. Emerson Fittipaldi, Pancho Carter, and John Jones, last year's Rookie of the Year. And there goes Michael. Michael gets past Little Al.
Passed him right going into number 1 turn. That was the braking part of it. It seems to be the place that they're going to pass mostly today, or at least between the fast cars. That's where they're going to be, Paul.
So that's the fight for second place. Michael Andretti now has second. Little Al drops back into 3rd place. Rick Mears continues to be the leader. Michael Andretti now on board a team with his father, something I think, Bobby, the Andrettis really in the past would have liked to have avoided. It's tough enough being teammates. It's got to be harder still when you're family.
Yes, and I think a lot of us have wondered just exactly how that was going to come out, because you wonder how much closeness can be lost between a father and son being on the same team. Things really get a lot of pressure there sometimes, and a lot of tension going on. For example, the guy that's run the fastest is going to look the best, and the other one just won't like that.
Michael Andretti, you see him on the far left of your screen now. Take a look at Al Unser Jr. because Danny Sullivan in the gold car, the right of your screen, has now begun to pull up and soon should be challenging Al Unser Jr.
Yes, he's pulling up. Danny's been working very good. Neither Danny nor Rick Sullivan. There's Danny coming under Little Al right now. Looks like he's getting run on, going into turn 1. See, there's the blocking of the cars, like I was talking about before. It caused Little Al to hesitate just a little bit, and Danny was able to scoot right on by with very little effort.
Yeah, hesitate perhaps, but not back out. That red, white, and blue car is the 30 car, Raul Boesel. Now, Little Al tried to use Boesel as an advantage. It didn't work for him. The two continue their fight.
Traffic is probably the biggest single problem that they have here in Phoenix. Maybe the track later on getting slippery will be a big problem. The traffic will even be worse then as far as creating problems here.
They both work past Bernard Jourdain and continue their ongoing fight for 3rd place. Danny Sullivan now beginning to pick up a head of steam and work his way back up through the field. The leader continues to be Rick Mears, followed by Michael Andretti. Rick Mears' first career win came on a mile at Milwaukee in 1978. There's the leaderboard. 61 laps are complete. We'll be back. Rick Mears is the leader of the race. He was the pole sitter, jumped out into a lead. We've got a problem as the yellow flag comes out. Yellow flag for a car that spun slowly up against the wall in 4. There it is. That's the 12 car of Didier Taze. And Rick Mears, the leader of the race, decides this is a good opportunity at lap 67 for yet another pit stop. This is his second at the race. Normally, they would come this distance. Taze didn't tap the wall, just a fast little spin. Might have gotten the rear into the wall before we caught the spin.
Rick was in pits, Paul, so fast. I mean, before almost anybody even knew there was a yellow, he was in, stopped, and he isn't out yet. It's been an awful long pit stop for Rick.
A heads-up move by Rick, but look at him work at the back of the car. Situation developing there. Didier Taze climbs out of that machine. His first ride with the RC-Aero. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Paul, they're having problems. The engine has stalled and it refuses to refire. They've put one starter in and now they're going to put another one in and they're going to see if they can get it restarted. They're having a great deal of difficulty here. He had come into the pits and had taken on fuel under normal circumstances and then the engine died. Now they've got it rekindled and he's off and away, but a very long stop. Thank goodness it was under caution as far as Rick Mears is concerned.
54 seconds, the stop for Rick Mears. That will put him behind in the standings. There goes the man that assumed the lead. That's Michael Andretti as they come out of the pits side by side. So Michael had picked up the lead, staying out for 1 lap further. And Rick Mears accelerates ahead of Michael. They'll have to reorganize themselves behind the pace car now as we are under yellow. Rick Mears was the leader in the early going. Reports out of Bristol now, Rusty Wallace wins there. This track, Phoenix International, celebrating its 25th anniversary here. It has been a track of firsts. The 1 mile distorted oval was carved out of the desert and designed as a multi-purpose racing facility. The grandstand was one set of wooden bleachers, but the racing itself was great. The first race saw front-engine roadsters and dirt cars challenged by a single rear-engine car. Great drivers like Eddie Sachs and Parnelli Jones chased glory in the desert sun. The speeds were 114 miles an hour, 52 miles an hour slower than this year, but still dangerous. Crew cut Johnny Rutherford was a rookie, and fellow Texan A.J. Foyt was already an Indy champion. A.J. won the first race here at Phoenix and earned $4,200. As Phoenix grew through the 60s, the rear-engine car took over. In 1965, Bobby Unser ended his third race here, cutting through the fence. The cloud of dust was so bad, the safety crews couldn't find Bobby's wreck. When they did, the car was cut in half. Bobby was unhurt. Later, he would notch 4 wins at Phoenix. In 77, Rick Mears made his debut as an IndyCar driver, and in 78, joined with Roger Penske. Phoenix is tough on Rick. Despite the fact that he has 4 poles here, he's only managed to win once in 12 years of trying. But with Roger Penske, Rick Mears has 3 national championships and 3 Indy 500 wins. Kart's history began here in 79 as they staged their first race. It was the dawn of a new way of looking at racing, with sports marketing and entertainment part of the concept. Gordon Johncock earned $18,000 as Kart's first winner at Phoenix. In 1980, Johnny Rutherford had wrapped up the championship and was leading the race when he touched tires with a back marker. He rolled upside down. The crowd feared the worst, but when the car was righted, he was not seriously injured. Tom Sneva won that race, and 4 times in 4 years. In 86 and 87, Kevin Cogan and Roberto Guerrero would score their first career wins here. Last year, Arie Luyendyk was leading, searching for his first IndyCar win when his car caught fire on a pit stop. With the help of crews, Arie escaped injury. After the fire was extinguished, he got back in and finished 9th in the race. Arie still searches for that elusive first win. Rick Mears captured last year's pole and was leading when he touched with another car and spun to a stop on the home stretch, ending his race. Mario Andretti won last year, taking home $121,000, an increase of $116,000 in just 25 years. The track is certainly growing in its 25-year history now. Magnificent grandstands. The Didier Taze car, little fire on there, they've now put that out. And we are still under yellow. We'll be back with more. Just outside of Phoenix, where the race fans know how to handle the heat and the terrain. It's unique here that you can watch the race from the hills that overlook the race course, or of course you can climb up into the grandstand and enjoy a little closer view.
They certainly know how to have a good time here.
Indy race fans everywhere know how to have a good time. Here are the standings as we look backwards from Bobby Rahal's car. Michael Andretti now is the leader with a full lap on the rest of the field, followed by Al Unser Jr., Danny Sullivan, Teo Fabi, and Emerson Fittipaldi.
But the reason, Paul, is because Michael didn't stop. Here he comes down, he just went free. Al was leading in the front of the pack. Michael is leading the race because he didn't stop for the last pit stop.
Now, Michael Andretti will try and get around Rick Mears and put Rick a lap down. Rick is certainly the threat here. He was the early leader of the race and is only back in position because of that long pit stop when they couldn't get the engine restarted. Michael has to be very conscious of the fact that Rick is right there and is going to try to get past him.
Now, right now we have Rick heavy on fuel, Michael very light on fuel, so it might bring a little bit more of an advantage towards Michael, although Rick's car is normally a little bit faster.
That's Emerson Fittipaldi. He is the 5th place car lying just ahead. Rick Mears continuing to try to hold off Michael Andretti, who runs alone on the leader lap. And Mears, of course, is trying to get around Emerson Fittipaldi and pick up 5th place.
Well, he passed Emo earlier pretty easy. Now, the only problem Rick's had is the engine lost fire, quit running in the pits. They had a hard time getting it started. For the people that missed it, that's how Rick ends up being back this far. There's Michael going right by Rick like there's nothing to it.
Michael Andretti using the traffic to his advantage and gets around Rick Mears. Starts into position, goes under Pancho Carter, and now separates Rick Mears in the battle that he had with Emerson Fittipaldi, the fight for fifth.
Pancho came back pretty strong there. He got a little bit excited when he saw Michael come under it so easy. But there Michael went right back by the second time, really.
Pancho Carter in that blue car is a further lap back. He is running in 9th place. Look how close Michael runs to Pancho as Rick Mears continues to close in. The white car is Michael Andretti, followed by that bright yellow machine, the Pennzoil car of Rick Mears.
Pancho's running the high groove, really trying to stay up, although he's not in the same lap with him.
Now just ahead is Bernard Jourdain. Michael handles him easily on the home stretch, goes into the first turn. Rick Mears is very careful as he closes down.
Michael's sticking good, but remember again, he's light on fuel. He has the advantages right now. Now Rick gets a little bit of clean air, a little bit of clean track with traffic, without traffic. Let's see what he can do with Michael, Paul.
Now we have to remember, it is Michael, the leader of this race. Rick Mears is actually running in 6th, but Rick is really the key factor in the race at the moment. If he can keep the car running, get around Michael and close up, he certainly was a critical factor in the early part. There he goes around Michael Andretti, and now hopes to start moving away and make that lap up so he comes back into contention. Let's go down to the pits, remembering that long stop of Rick Mears. Here's Jack Arute.
Paul, you're looking at the starter that the Penske team uses during practice to start the engine on their car. Now, this is the starter they use under race conditions. You see the shaft is much longer. Now, they've had some crew changes here, and by mistake, the crew member that's responsible for restarting the car when under certain circumstances it stalls, grabbed the wrong starter. That's what accounted for almost 15 seconds of that lengthy stop. It's not unusual for a car to stall on pit road, but it's very unusual to go for the wrong shaft and starter. Back to you.
Well, now, Bobby Unser, that's going to be something fascinating in the Penske team as we continue to watch Rick Mears now up behind Fittipaldi, the battle for 5th place. There have been changes in the Penske team. Peter Parrott, Rick Mears' former crew chief, as Mears tries Fittipaldi, left, went over to work on the Porsche car. They promoted one of the regular members of the team, Richard Buck, who came up. And we've got a problem being reported now. As we continue to watch for the battle of 6, they begin to slow down because the yellow flag being displayed. Bobby Rahal climbs out of his car, which has smacked the wall, apparently in a confrontation with Bernard Jourdain.
Yes, that's a problem. You can see Rahal feels that he was in the right, that Jourdain did something wrong. There's a rookie versus Rahal. Rahal is, of course, very experienced oval track, any type of a racer. And I have a hunch that when we see the reruns, we're going to see that Jourdain made a little bit of a mistake and captured him right into the wall, Paul.
View from Bobby Rahal's onboard camera. Now both cars sit empty and silent by the edge of the course, just under the bridge over between 3 and 4. And the safety crews wisely trying to keep these two drivers separated from one another. They are not happy with that situation, either one.
No, they certainly are. They wait for this first race of the season to come around, and to have an accident on the track that's caused by somebody making a mistake just isn't what they look forward to.
Well, we got a view of Jourdain a lap or two earlier as Rick Mears had to jump on the binders a little bit and slide behind Jourdain because Jourdain dialed across the corner. Now this looks out the back end of Bobby Rahal's car. That's Pancho Carter coming up behind. Or not Carter. There's the accident. There's the accident as he tags the wall and grinds to a stop. Now that doesn't give you any idea of what actually happened, but it is certainly a fascinating view of the accident. Bobby Rahal is obviously
certainly
uninjured.
See some of the pieces coming off the car too.
Exactly. Bobby Rahal talks with some of the safety crews. He is obviously uninjured, as is Bernard Jourdain. Both are out of their cars, but the yellow flag flies for the 3rd time here at Phoenix with Michael Andretti leading. And we'll be back with more exclusive coverage of the Auto Works 200 after this commercial and a word from our local ABC station. Well, we're just 10 miles away from the halfway point. 90 laps or 90 miles complete. We've had 4 different leaders. You see the rest of the facts on this particular event, and we are under caution at the moment. This particular yellow flag waves because Bernard Jourdain and Bobby Rahal tangled between the 3rd and the 4th turn. The leaderboard at the moment, Michael Andretti leads. Al Unser Jr., Danny Sullivan, Teo Fabi, Emerson Fittipaldi, and in 6th place is Rick Mears. We look at the rest of the board. Now, Rick, remember, was the early leader, but he had about a 55-second pit stop when he killed the engine, and that forced him well back in the field. So we continue under yellow. Let's go down to Jack Arute.
And Paul, Bobby Rahal is none too happy about this accident, Bobby.
No, you know, when you're lapping somebody for the 4th time, I mean, it never seems to fail, but I mean, he saw me for 4 laps trying to get by, pulled up next to him once or twice, and he, you know, tried to go around the outside of me and just over his head, you know, and he got into the corner too deep and lost it, and I had nowhere to go. I mean, I got off it, but you know, when you get off the momentum, the car just wants to go straight, and I tried to stay out of it, but I couldn't, and
Yeah, but when you got out of the car, you did have a conversation with Jourdain. What did you say?
Well, I just said for 3 laps, you know, because Nick Venaro's been waving the blue flag. You know, I've raced against Pancho Carter for 3 laps, and you can get by him, and everything's under control. But this guy, it's, I don't know, it's frustrating.
That's an understatement if there ever was one.
So Bobby Rahal starts his season with the Cranes family in Craco with a less than satisfactory conclusion. Well, this track is very, very tough. We asked a series of the drivers, just how tough is it? How do you handle it?
Well, I'd have to say traffic. You know, it's always been tough. When you get on a 1-mile track, you're in traffic a lot, basically from start to finish.
You're on a track, you're on there for 200 miles, and I'm sure that's really going to play a tough part. I've noticed that just from my first running here in late January to now, I've done a lot of work trying to build up my, you know, around the neck and upper body, because it just takes so much strength because you're continually, you know, going around in the same direction. It just really plays tough on your neck.
I think the hardest part is it's so fast, it's so short, there's so much traffic, is to keep on the leader's lap, even when you got a problem. Let's say you get a bad set of tires or you got a problem with the car, it's not handling, you need to wait till the next pit stop to make an adjustment, is trying to stay on that leader lap. So when it comes down to the last 50 laps, you're right there ready to race with them.
Very tough to achieve a balance, to have a consistent car. Probably the toughest of all of our ovals.
I think perhaps waiting for the conditions to allow you to do some passing on the outside, to be a 2 abreast, which usually doesn't arrive until about mid-event.
Coming up with the ultimate setup where you can get the car work in 1 and 2, the same as 3 and 4. It's almost impossible to do, and I think the guy that is able to get that combination is the guy that's going to be the quickest.
A little parking lot of damaged vehicles off of the inside of the 4th turn, right at the head of the pit entrance. Rahal's, Jourdain's, Didier Tay's, all parked there side by side. Some rather expensive wreckage, Bobby.
It certainly is, and it's kind of sad to see somebody as quick and as good as Bobby Rahal out, but these things just happen, and not on purpose, and people have to learn to start someplace. It looks like they're getting ready to come down for the green now, Paul.
All right, the starter with a green flag in hand takes a look up to the pace car in the 4th turn, trying to decide whether or not they're going to go green, and it doesn't look like it. Pace car points Michael Andretti and his Kmart car out to the outside and says, drop back in line. You take a look over Mario Andretti's shoulder as the field continues to line behind the pace car and comes around. Now, Saturday on ABC's Wide World of Sports, the world's best cyclists prep for the Tour de France. They'll travel the miles of rugged cobblestone streets in a grueling European classic, the Paris-Roubaix bicycle race. Plus, the countdown to the Kentucky Derby continues with the Bluegrass Stakes. That's Saturday on ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Paul, right now, I just want to bring up that we've got Michael Andretti leading as far as the serial, leading the race, and totally out in front and almost clear in the back. We have Rick Mears. In between, there's a whole bunch of cars that Rick and, of course, many of the other cars have lapped many times. So we're going to see a traffic jam and some pretty fancy driving between now and when Michael and Rick Mears get back together again.
The car certainly to watch is that of Rick Mears. It currently lies in 5th place as they indicate yet another lap before they come back to the green flag as they continue to clean up the course and, perhaps more important, get the different safety vehicles back on station so that they can be prepared for any future emergency.
And one of the things they look for the most out there is, remember, these tires don't have inner tubes, they don't have safety liners. They've got to get all the bolts and nuts or little tiny pieces up off the ground so as you don't cut a tire, because that really causes accidents fast, Paul.
Well, Michael Andretti will lead them back to the green. A number of cars with the pit stops in the yellow have been able to get back onto the leader lap. Among them, the 2nd place car of Little Al, then Danny Sullivan in 3rd. Tale Fabi, the 4th place car. Rick Mears, the 5th place car, and Emerson Fittipaldi in 6th. All are back on the leader lap as we look over the shoulder of Al Unser Jr., the 2nd place driver.
Yes, now he's been going fast all day. He's been very fast, but just hasn't quite been up in the leading part. He's looking for that track to get slippery. Looks like he's working good on the slippery track, Paul. Here they come down to the green.
Now the pace picks up. Michael Andretti anticipates that green flag and begins to accelerate. Al Unser Jr. has some distance to go before he can catch up to the leader. So Michael Andretti will have smooth sailing all alone with 97 miles now into the record book.
Now this is what young Michael wants. He doesn't want that traffic, and as we heard from Rick Mears a while ago, they really don't like the traffic here. It slows them up. He's got totally clean, good, dry racetrack in front of him, so he's really going to make hay while the sun shines.
Al Unser Jr. has Ludwig Heimrath just in front as Little Al moves around, picks off Heimrath as he works his way up.
That's a Chevrolet versus a Judd engine. Heimrath is driving a Judd engine for Ron Himmelgarn, Paul.
Not a battle for position. Al Unser Jr. has his target about a quarter of a lap ahead as he tries to catch Michael Andretti, that Valvoline car. Al Unser Jr. works its way onto the main stretch, out barely up against the wall and then dives. Now at this point, Bobby, he's both on the throttle and the brake.
Yeah, they actually use them together. In all oval track racing, as I mentioned earlier, they use left foot braking only, whereas on the road course, a lot of them use right foot braking and right foot on the throttle, heel and toe the throttle. But on the oval, it's left and right all the time. So sometimes when they get down to turn 1, they physically use the throttle and brake together.
The fight here is for 4th place between Teo Fabi and the Porsche-powered machine. A March chassis, and Rick Mears goes screaming right on past, and Rick now picks up 4th place and sets his sight on his teammate Danny Sullivan, who is currently in 3rd. Let's go down to the Porsche pit and Jack Arute.
And the man that watched Rick go by was a fellow that used to work with Rick Mears at Team Penske, but he now runs Team Porsche. Derek Walker, a good run for the team in Teo Fabi this afternoon.
Yeah, it's been an excellent run so far. We've had a lot to deal with. Teo's got a clutch problem right now, so we have a real problem getting in and out of the pits, but the guys are doing a fantastic job. We're really getting on with the program. I hope we can stay that way at the end.
Well, he's hoping down here, and the hopes of all of Germany, in fact, are hoping, because, you know, they're running that factory March with that Porsche, and it seems to be running quite well, gentlemen.
Well, this March chassis is so secret. There are only 2 being built for this year. This is the only one that's making its appearance here. The other is a different March chassis with Alfa Romeo, more of a development chassis from last year. This is a whole new design, and it's so secret that when you go to March, you have to have special keys and cards to get back into the rooms they're working on this.
Well, it's what you call a Porsche March operation is what it is, and the car is actually doing very good, and especially, Paul, when you recognize the car just barely got built. It's hardly had any development time, so we really have to take our hats off to them. They've done well with it.
Well, that whole team, not just the movement of Derek Walker, but the new crew chief, Peter Parrott, coming over from Rick Mears, Tony Sacali as the aerodynamicist, all helping the Porsche effort this year. Michael Andretti, the Kmart car, out in front of the race, and he's out in front by a full 6 seconds over Al Unser Jr.
Yes, and that's we're hoping that's going to develop into a race. Incidentally, the track has not gotten as slippery today as we thought it was going to get, Paul. We're more than halfway over. There's little Al down the back straightaway.
He's running in 2nd. Danny Sullivan, the defending CART PPG IndyCar World Series champion, is just behind, running in 3rd, and there you see him in the gold and white car. He's closing in.
That's going to be the race. Little Al is moving the traffic over. Danny is taking advantage of it and trying to get through a little bit easier. Little Al coming up behind the Domino's Pizza car.
All right, so Danny Sullivan now closes up the fight with Al Unser Jr. He has to handle Raul Boesel first.
And there's Rick Mears right behind Danny. Danny not only has a headache trying to catch Little Al, but he's got Rick right behind him.
We're past the halfway point now. The leaders completed 106 miles of the 200 scheduled here today. The Penske team now running together, 3rd and 4th on the course. Michael Andretti is the leader, and Al Unser Jr. is 2nd.
Now that's Rick's favorite place to pass, coming off of turn 2 on the outside. Let's watch the next lap around and see if Rick doesn't try a pass on Danny. That's where he passed him the last time.
Now, if you were Rick Mears there, isn't that a dangerous situation where Raul Boesel sees the first car? He saw Danny Sullivan come up on him, and the temptation that Rick would have would be to come right through behind Danny. but you have to make the assumption that maybe the car you're passing didn't see both cars there.
Right, Paul, and that was the most dangerous part on the track to do that, coming off of turn 2, because the drivers don't normally look to the right and see if somebody's coming by. But Rick has a lot of racetrack savvy, and he eased off of it.
What you got there was really heads-up experience from years of racing. Rick Mears said it's just not worth it to get the position here. I'll wait half a lap.
He's been the class of the field today. There's no question about that.
Michael Andretti still leads it. Al Unser Jr. is second. Danny Sullivan and Rick now fight with one another for third place. So the Penske team is battling with itself.
Now it's a fake pass. Rick would like Danny to think he's going to pass him on the inside, take Danny to the bottom, possibly go by the outside.
I saw Danny's hand come up. Was he waving Rick through, do you think?
It doesn't seem reasonable that he would do that.
Came up to his helmet. Might have just been working with tear-off on his visor to clear his vision, but as he did, Rick Mears on the main stretch came by, and Mears picked up third.
Well, you can tell the way they started this race that Danny isn't going to give him very much for nothing today.
Of course, if part of the tactics of this race becomes how do you save the race car, maybe Danny said, well, let's just let Rick go on fast and I'll save the car a little bit. I know how good it's running.
Well, Rick has already put 2 cars between he and Danny. The traffic, it just wipes Danny out. Of course, he went right by the outside anyway.
All right, Rick Mears now running in third, and line just ahead, about a half a second ahead. In fact, we should see him shortly, is the car of Al Unser Jr. He runs in second place.
Well, Rick has been the class of the field, but what we've seen so far in the race, he should be able to get up and chew on little Al pretty quick. Little Al has been awfully fast all day, just lacking a little tiny bit compared to Rick.
Rick comes out and around Jones and now is in contact with Al Unser Jr. So the fight will develop shortly for second place. Mario Andretti is the leader at the Auto Works 200 at Phoenix. We'll be back.
For the Indianapolis 500, it's the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach next Sunday on ABC Sports.
We're back at Phoenix. On board Al Unser Jr. as Rick Mears pulls up to try a challenge on the main stretch. Mears challenging with Al Unser Jr. And look at this. On the outside off of turn 2, Rick Mears has second place. Rick Mears has the second position.
If you watch that pass, you'll see that their tires were over 6 or 8 inches apart. I really don't think little Al was expecting a pass just coming off of turn 2 like that.
And now he sets sights on the leader, Michael Andretti. We have a fight for the lead as there is Rick and Michael, and look at that.
It's just simple. I mean,
wow.
Rick has been the class of the field all day, like I said a while ago. The guy is really hooked up. It just seems like he can go any place on the racetrack.
That wasn't a pass with a back marker. That was the leader of the race. Now Michael pulls up. Maybe he surprised him.
Well, that other car held him up for a little bit. Michael's getting alongside of Rick, but that won't last very long compared to what they just got through doing.
Ludwig Heimrath pulls clear of this battle. He doesn't want any part of it. Rick Mears picks up the lead once again. The pole sitter, the early leader of the race, had a long pit stop, 55 seconds, dropped well back into the field, now has worked his way back up to the top position.
I watched Rick Mears past Al Jr. We have a problem to spin over in turn 2, Paul.
And there is the car, Scott Pruitt. Scott Pruitt, his first ride for True Sports.
He's lost part of his rear wing, Paul. If you notice right there, the back part of the rear wing is gone. Now, I would just have to use an assumption right now that the wing just broke and went away, and that probably caused his problem.
So the question is, did the wing break and he spun, or did he do a quick little loop and catch the wall?
Normally, if they catch a wall with the wing, Paul, it'll really be bent all over. In this particular case, the back part of it, the important part of it, just all gone.
Astute observation, Bobby Unser. We'll see if we can't follow up on that story. Pace car is out. There is Rick Mears, the leader behind it. And there is Michael Andretti, as Michael comes out of second place and into the pits for routine service from the Newman Haas crew. Car up on the jacks, 3 tires being changed, fuel pouring into the car now, 40 gallons of methanol alcohol. Right rear is already changed. The throttle comes up as he thinks he was getting ready to leave, but no, all the fuel is not in the car yet. Now it is. It's down off the jack, and Michael Andretti is out.
Not a real fast stop. 17, 18 seconds on that one, Paul.
Michael Andretti comes out along with Danny Sullivan, but Danny Sullivan gets out ahead of Michael Andretti. The leader is still Rick Mears. We are under yellow once again, the Auto Works 200 at Phoenix. We'll be back. live at Phoenix. Roger Penske on two-way radio communicating with Rick Mears. Roger will run Rick's car as he's saying it's green, let's go, go, go. We are back racing once again. Rick Mears is out in front of the field as they take the green flag. Just moments ago, he simply blew the leader, Michael Andretti, right to the weeds. Just right on past as if Michael was a back marker. Then Michael moved up and started to challenge once again.
Well, Rick is in clean air. He has no traffic for a while, Paul, and he just is literally going to run away with them, make hay while the sun shines before he has to do his next pit stop.
The astounding fact is that with the stops, Teo Fabi in the Porsche Powers machine, the Quaker State car, moves up into second place. Now, Fabi finished fourth last fall at Nazareth on the 1 mile oval there. His only top 5 finish of the entire last year. There's Teo now. Now, here he is running in second place. So the presence of Tony Cicali as an aerodynamicist, Walker, Parrott, all on that team, and a winner of work seems to be paying off.
Well,
let's go to Jack Arute right now with Roger Penske.
The captain and head of Team Penske, Roger, you've got to breathe a little big sigh of relief after just rocketing from the back to the front with Rick.
Well, the car's working good. Unfortunately, we stalled it there and couldn't get it started. We didn't want to push it and break the rear wing off, so it's one of those things. We just got to hold on here till the end.
Butterflies kind of like bullets this year because of the team changes, or are you somewhat confident about things?
I didn't hear you.
Butterflies a little bit like bullets this year with the team changes, or are you a little confident this year?
No, we've got a strong team. You know, we've got a great group of guys here, and so far, so good. We just got to do a good job in the pits here at the end.
Well, he hasn't left this perch, but normally he doesn't throughout the course of the race. Back to you.
Well, Jack, the Penske team is indeed deep in talent. Roger Penske is the manager for Rick's car when they are in competition. Chuck Sprague now is the overall manager of the Danny Sullivan car when they are racing, replacing Derek Walker, who used to take those chores.
And the people he has there, Paul, are good people, but Roger always has a backup for no matter who works for him. I don't care who it is that's with Roger Penske, he always has somebody in mind that can replace him.
The team manager, Derek Walker from Penske, left Penske, came over to this car at the end of last season to help with this effort, and then it wasn't long, and he hired Rick Mears' crew chief, Peter Parrott, away. Now, we take a look at the battle for fourth place as Al Unser Jr. tries to hold off Michael Andretti as Michael starts to work his way back up through the field.
Michael's big deal early in the race was not making a pit stop when everybody else did. Get to the front, get out of the traffic, make a lot of distance with no problems like that. Now he's got caught, he's back in traffic. He's running like a normal driver for a while now. We're having some good racing out of this because there's Michael and there's little Al right in front of him in the blue car.
This is a fight for fourth place. Blue car left of your screen as they work around a slower car. Here comes Al Unser Jr. being chased by Michael Andretti. Again, Chevrolet power in both of these machines.
And both of them been handling good all day. We just really can't say anything bad about most of the cars.
Emerson Fittipaldi dropped suddenly, very quickly around the Porsche car of Teo Fabi, and Emerson picks up second place.
Yes, Emo's been good. I think the difference between the PC-18 that he crashed yesterday and the PC-17 he's driving today is really not much different, but it takes Emo a little bit to get used to it.
Not much different, but in a lot of ways, maybe his confidence is higher with a car that's raced so well for a full season and is better proven.
But he liked the other car an awful lot, Paul. I talked to Emo 2 days ago, and I don't think I've ever seen Emo as happy in the IndyCar racing as he was then.
Now Danny Sullivan has moved around Michael Andretti, and Michael drops back into sixth place. Sullivan moves up to fifth, and now Sullivan will begin to challenge Al Unser Jr. for fourth. And look how quickly Sullivan comes up.
Yes, those PC-18s, as we said earlier, are just fast. Now, whether he's going to be able to get by little Al real easy or not, we'll just have to see here in a moment.
Now, one of the explanations, perhaps, is why they are fast. They're both the same engine. Let's assume they're the same horsepower. Look at Danny as they got a drag race, and little Al says, you're not coming in there. Shuts the door on him. The PC-18, they really put it on a diet. It's a lot slimmer and therefore a little smoother through the air.
Well, it is, and where they're hoping that's going to show up the most, of course, going to be Indianapolis, but the car's just flat handled good, Paul. If you watch Rick and you watch Danny, they just really stick through the turns good.
Danny Sullivan and Al Unser Jr. side by side for the second as Danny Sullivan tries to use the positioning of Raul Boisel. Now it works a bit to Al Unser's advantage as Al Unser Jr. uses Ludwig Heimrath and Raul Boisel. They split them as they come down the main stretch. Look at Al as he ducks in alongside of Heimrath and maintains the position.
Now that's good racing. Well, did a little bit of a gamble working in between them there, but he did come out ahead on the thing.
137 miles to complete. The average speed is 118.9 miles an hour as Al Unser Jr. continues to try and hold off a charging Danny Sullivan. The battle is for fourth. Fourth and fifth is what we're watching.
Well, that was just a little bit of stubbornness, but it sure makes for good racing for everybody.
So Al Unser Jr. continues to hold that position. Teo Fabi lies just ahead of this battle as Danny Sullivan tries it again. Sullivan using the backside of the race course now.
Now that's the same advantage that Rick has coming off of turn 2. They seem to get through 1 and 2, turn really good in the PC-18 and get a head start or maybe about a 3-mile advantage getting off of turn 2.
So Danny Sullivan now picks up fourth place. Rick Mears, Danny's teammate, is still our leader. Second place is Emerson Fittipaldi. We'll be back. 140 miles are complete at the Auto Works 200 at Phoenix. Rick Mears, the Pennzoil car, running out in front. Last year's Indianapolis 500 winner. The last time he won on a mile was at Milwaukee last year. Let's go down to the pits. Brian Hammonds.
Well, all of a sudden, Paul, there's a fuel story. If we go green the rest of the way, Little Al is going to be very, very close on fuel. I say it depends on the situation, whether or not they come in or not. So that could be something to follow up on, Paul.
All right, Bobby Unser. These cars now have computer chip systems that do engine management to tell the car how much fuel it can use in order to go the distance. How could something happen where it comes short?
Well, Paul, even though he laid on that a little further, almost every car in the race now has the computer system in it. And what happens is they turn them a little bit tighter. They try to, when they lower the boost pressure like last year in the road, they try to get it back by getting more RPM out of it. And RPM is fuel consumption. So Little Al probably trying to make a little bit more RPM to get a little speed.
The battle is for third place now. Teo Fabi, the green and white car, runs in third place. Danny Sullivan, the gold and white. The Miller car now begins to move up to challenge.
That Porsche is still running good, and incidentally, doesn't seem to be having those trouble getting in and out of the pits with the clutch problem we talked about earlier. There he is in third place. Now, that's very respectable.
And here we can get a comparison of the two different kinds of power. They're both V8s. One manufactured over at Weissach, Stuttgart, the Porsche machine, and the Chevrolet Ilmor design, which is manufactured in Brixworth, England. As the two of them now, here comes Sullivan. And if that's a comparison of power, well, the Porsche still has some work to do. Sullivan now moves up to third.
Paul, I don't think there's any question that the Chevrolet is still better than the Porsche as far as power goes right now, but just look and see how much better the Porsche is than it was last year. It'll give you an indication that they're stubborn people, and they're going to stick with it until they get it working really good.
But Danny Sullivan continues to chop his way through the field. He is trying to move up toward the front, catch Emerson Fittipaldi, and more important, his teammate Rick Mears, who currently runs in first place. And we've got a problem being reported out of the pits now. As the 65 car, that's John Jones, came down the pits, and here is the result of it. The car had a fire on one side of it. All of the crews, the safety crews as well as pit crews, came charging over toward this car and toward the wall and poured water on it. Now, normally you don't fight a petrol fire with something like water. It just spreads the fire. But when you're using alcohol, if you pour water on it, it just dilutes the alcohol and the fire goes out.
That's true, Paul, but I think this particular case was more of an engine problem. It was coming out of the vent holes on the right-hand side of the car. I don't really think they really had so much of a fire as they just did a lot of oil and stuff leaking, making smoke.
So last year's Rookie of the Year, John Jones, who was running in 14th place, has fallen out of the race. We'll be back with more exclusive coverage of the Auto Works 200 after this commercial and a word from our ABC stations. We're back live at Phoenix International Raceway, where Rick Mears is averaging 121 miles an hour. He's completed 154 miles of this 200-mile race, and he is out in front. And just disappearing from the rest of the field, he has a full lap on the second-place car of Emerson Fittipaldi. Let's go down now to Jackaroo.
Paul Page, John Jones had a very close call as he brought a flaming car onto pit road. John, you got out of there pretty quick, though.
Yeah, all of a sudden, when I was going down the back, I heard a bit of a pop. And what happened, it's just the aluminum beside my seat that got awfully warm. So I was coming in just trying to undo the belts and jump out, and I guess a little of my suit caught on fire.
Awfully warm, real warm. And what's really ironic is the fact that this is the same pit Ari Leyendijk had last year when he caught on fire, Paul.
Well, the second-place car, Emerson Fittipaldi, comes into the pits from service from the Patrick Racing team. The stop appears to be routine. It should now have all the fuel necessary. A little long because the fuel goes in slow, 20 seconds. And now here comes the leader, Rick Mears. Danny Sullivan is the second place car. We watch the Penske team go to work. Now this is from the view of the crew chief changing the right front tire. As he goes to work, one tire already off. Wheel and tire on. He runs around to the front of the car, look back, make sure that everything is okay. And the car is already gone. 14 seconds to stop for Rick Mears.
Now that would be compared to Emerson Fittipaldi's 20 seconds, Paul.
So Rick Mears comes out and back into the action. Penske team service has not changed, has it?
Typical Penske pit stop.
Name has changed, but the game remains the same as Richard Buck now leads that crew. And Danny Sullivan, in the course of that pit stop, considering the roll in and roll out for Rick Mears, the other Penske car now picks up the lead. Rick Mears came out of the pits into second place. Danny Sullivan leads it, but of course Danny hasn't stopped.
No, and we can look for Danny coming in fairly quick now because he has crew getting ready, Paul. It won't be too long.
Rick Mears, as he came out, got hit by Al Unser Jr. and actually sits in third place right now. Al Unser Jr. is in second, but of that group, only Rick Mears has made a stop. 159 miles, 159 laps are complete.
There's Danny Sullivan going by, working the back markers a little bit.
Unusual sight there just ahead of him is Scott Pruitt in the number 3 car, bright yellow helmet. We take a look at the leaders now, Danny Sullivan and Rick Mears, the Penske team out in front. And continuing the contest, Derek Daly up now around Scott Pruitt. And just behind Danny Sullivan, it's not a battle for position. Daly is currently running in 11th place, and Pruitt is running in 13th.
Scott Pruitt's first oval track race, this Phoenix race is, Paul, so he's getting a lot of good experience today.
Bobby, this has got to be a terribly tough track for an IndyCar rookie. A terrible first start for anybody. Now, Scott got a little experience last year, but anytime you come here, it's got to get your attention.
I think Phoenix is one of the hardest racetracks to go do any learning at, but it's a necessary thing. If you're good here, you can about handle anything.
Now the crew working on the Domino's pizza car, Raul Boisel, Team Shearson. And this is not a routine stop because the back cowling is coming off.
Yeah, there was a little bit of smoke coming out, and of course, that's always a bad sign.
Rick Mears in second place, continues to chase Danny Sullivan now. The front row of this race was the Penske organization. Now they occupy 1 and 2 with Rick Mears about 8 seconds back from the leader, Danny Sullivan.
And keep in mind, Rick has made his last pit stop, providing he did get a full load of fuel. Danny still has to stop. So if nothing else happened, Rick would be able to pass Danny that way, Paul.
Al Unser Jr. is third. Michael Andretti is fourth. Emerson Fittipaldi is fifth, and Teo Fabi is now sixth. Teo Fabi has also completed his stop and should be able to go the distance with the fuel that he carries. That is assuming that all of them have enough fuel for the entire distance.
Yes, remember, we don't really know what they take on the last time because we're not too sure that their fuel tanks are full.
Danny Sullivan runs alone out in front of this field. Rick Mears is a lap behind Danny now. The Penske team continues their dominance. We'll be back with more from Phoenix after this. We're back live at the Auto Works 200 from Phoenix, Arizona. The desert just west of Phoenix. The temperature well over about 104 degrees right now. And under this tremendous heat, Danny Sullivan continues to lead the race, followed by his teammate, then Al Unser, then Michael Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi. You're on board watching Mario Andretti work his way around. Teo Fabi with a good run in the Porsche-powered machine. Boisel with an engine problem now. Mario Carter, Ludwig Heimrath. We look through down this entire race field. All of the drivers starting here today, now falling well behind a Danny Sullivan machine that is just tearing up the racetrack. Let's go down to the pits now, Jack Arute.
Well, you alluded to the fact that a black box is now on board most of the cars, and this is one of those type of black boxes that calculates fuel consumption and things of that nature. But what the Penske team has done is they have calibration for their fuel tank as well. So they get the readings from the black box, the readings from this fuel tank, and what they do is they enter it into this computer right here, and that calculates the pit strategy and fuel consumption. And because of that, right now, Danny Sullivan and the crew, they're not really sure whether they're going to pit it or not. They feel they may be able to go the distance. As far as fuel, they still have enough if they have to come in for a splash and go.
Well, Jack Arute, I wonder, when they do something like that, how apprehensive they have to be at putting their confidence in that technology.
Well, you know, they've been at the leading edge of all this type of computer technology, from designing cars, etc., and they've got a long storied history of trying things that are new. They were the ones that went with the expanded fuel nozzle to try and get more fuel in, so it's not unusual for them to put their faith in a little metal black box like this, at least if your name is Penske.
Well, in the past several laps, Rick Mears has been closing the interval from 8 seconds to 6 seconds behind Danny Sullivan. Let's go to the pits again. The story on Al Unser Jr. Here's Ryan Hammond.
All the calculations have been going on behind me. They're saying, no, they're not going to stop. They're going the distance on this load of fuel. Hopefully, it's going to be very, very close. Little Al Unser Jr. will not pit between now and the end of the race. Paul?
That's Rick Gallis we see standing on the wall, and I can tell you he's nervous trying to make that decision, Paul.
You've probably got the computers working, the calculators, and somebody back in the back on an abacus trying to figure out where they are.
If he thinks somebody's making better gas mileage than him, he's going to try to make it up the pit.
Danny Sullivan now closing on Michael Andretti, that white number 6 car, and when he does, he will again lap the 4th place car. So Danny Sullivan is just flying, but Rick Mears is running a touch faster behind him.
Yes, he is. He's closing up relatively fast, and of course the traffic, he's running into some pretty fast cars. Danny is right here. It'll give Rick a little bit of advantage on catching Danny. We've only got about 25 laps of the race left, and it's going to end up being a pretty good race between Danny and Rick.
Report out of the Patrick pit is that the 5th place car, Emerson Fittipaldi, also is going to try and go the distance. You take a look at the leader now, as there's Danny Sullivan. The gold and white car comes to the line. The yellow Pennzoil car, that belongs to Rick Mears. He is just 3.5 seconds back and closing.
Now, Rick has been able to get through traffic just a little bit better than anybody else all day. He should be able to catch Danny sometime just before the end of the race.
Danny Sullivan still fighting with Michael. There comes Rick.
And historically, though, Danny Sullivan does the best towards the end of the race, Paul.
Well, part of the story of the end of the race is also going to be physical conditioning. You've heard us tell you that in the turns here between 3 and 4 that there's 5 G's of force pulling on the driver, and especially pulling his head over, trying to pull it out of the cockpit. And the temperature now 103, 104 degrees, bearing down. They've been running in that heat all day. If you're not in good physical condition, you're not quite as alert and you're not quite as fast. Now, Bobby Unser, the 2, Rick Mears, Danny Sullivan, is one better?
I think oval track-wise, both of them have to be very good. Or as far as experience, Rick is obviously the best on that, but Danny is in very good physical shape, and Rick just won't wear him out. Danny comes on really strong right at the end.
Danny Sullivan now having to thread his way in traffic. That's Emerson Fittipaldi just ahead. The gold and white car is Danny Sullivan carrying number 1. Indicates that he is the defending national champion. Works his way around Osel. Apparently they got that car back and operating again.
Rick is less than 1 second behind. You can see the 2 of them right there. Danny is right here. Rick is just right behind now. He'll be chewing on his bumper here pretty quick, Paul.
No holds barred in the Penske team now, as Rick Mears tries to close in on Danny Sullivan. Jack Arute.
Well, you talk about the physical conditioning of Danny Sullivan. This year, he has gotten himself a trainer, and when we talked to him before the start of the race, they were very specific as to what they wanted to develop this year. He's gained a little weight. He's beefed up a little bit in certain areas. In his lower body, down by his thighs, and in his upper body strength, from his shoulders, his pecs, and up into his neck. He said, I worked all winter on those particular areas with a trainer, day after day after day. Back to you.
Well, both Rick Mears and Danny Sullivan are into physical fitness. Danny's been at it a little longer, and they also, like most of the drivers, are very conscious, just like an athlete in an Olympic sport, of their physical conditioning. Now, here they are running together on the course. Look at Rick Mears. No question about it, just blows Danny away.
Well,
unbelievable.
You couldn't even call that a pass. That was annihilation is all that was. Rick is just absolutely faster. Danny's into the pits, making a pit stop. There was a reason for that, Paul. I guess it shouldn't have been quite that easy.
Now, Danny Sullivan was apparently already on his slowdown for this pit stop.
And no tires. Danny's just taking on fuel and back out. This will put Danny in second place. What I started mentioning a while ago is guess what's coming on for next year? It's going to be power steering. Probably going to be done this year.
10 seconds to stop for Sullivan. Let's go to Jack Arute.
And that's all they needed to change the tires. They didn't need additional time to take on fuel because listen to this. There ain't no more, gentlemen.
So Danny Sullivan has all the fuel that there is, but Rick Mears has the lead now with 15 miles to go in the race.
Now Rick will turn back his boost, turn back the fuel consumption as much as he can to try to guarantee. He's the class of the field. He's got him outrun, but he's got to make that fuel mileage. I'm sure that if Danny is worried, Rick has to be worried. So he's been turning back that power, Paul.
And here's some good news for you, Bobby Unser. The family's looking pretty good because as Danny came out of the pits, Little Al was able to streak past and pick up second place.
But there's another fuel problem. We don't know whether Little Al's going to have enough fuel to get to the end right now. So it's going to be typical of a lot of the Phoenix races. Is there enough fuel?
And now we're looking at what perhaps will be a fight for third place. Danny Sullivan, the gold and white car, is third. But that white number 6 car, the white car at the right of your screen, is Michael Andretti, and he is running with Danny on the track. Emerson Fittipaldi is still holding on in the top 5, running in 5th. Michael Andretti, at some point, seems to close a little bit on Sullivan. There's Michael on the main stretch.
Well, if Sullivan really has a shortage of fuel the way it appears, then he would be dialing back his boost a little bit and trying to conserve a little bit of fuel, or try to back off the gas as much as possible. Whereas we say they don't ever back off going into turn 3, maybe he lifts a little bit to make a little bit better mileage, Paul.
Well, the relationship will be within the Andretti family as we continue to watch Rick Mears. Now, look at this. The yellow car is Rick Mears, and that is the 5th place car of Emerson Fittipaldi just ahead.
And you notice Rick didn't even try a pass there. Rick is extra smart, extra good on these ovals. He just let Emo have the line, stayed right behind him. He's totally happy, conserving.
On board now with the 2nd place car, Al Unser Jr., but Al has to be aware by looking over into those mirrors that Danny Sullivan is closing down. In the last 4 laps, he's dropped from 3 1/4 seconds down to just over a second. So now, in fact, there it is. Look at that interval. It's Danny Sullivan challenging Little Al. Fight is for 2nd place.
I think it's just all a fuel consumption problem between the two of them.
So let's take a look with 10 laps to go to see what the outcome will be as 2nd place closing down on Rick Mears. It is Mears, then that blue and white car, the Valvoline machine of Al Unser Jr., and the gold and white Miller car of Danny Sullivan. And Sullivan tries at the back. The front is all fighting together right now. Sullivan tacks at the back of Al Unser Jr.'s car. Can't get past, and Little Al is pretty tough to pass on an oval.
Oh, he is, and it's right towards the end of the race. We've only got about 8 or 9 laps left, so they're all going to be tough right now.
8 laps to go for the leader. Rick Mears has lapped the entire field, running well out in front. But look at this fight for 2nd place. Al Unser Jr. trying to hold off Danny Sullivan.
And they're right in the middle of all the traffic on the track right now. That's really a lot of traffic for this race.
Well, we're talking 2 guys who are pretty good at running in traffic. That's Scott Pruitt just ahead of Little Al. Scott currently runs in 12th place. Little Al comes to the inside. And look at this, an intervention there as Michael Andretti has moved down and gotten in between Little Al and Danny Sullivan, though Michael Andretti is running in 3rd place. 7 laps to go. The fight continues at the front of the field. Michael just came out of nowhere to join this battle. Al Unser Jr. still running in 2nd. Michael Andretti up in 3rd right now. Danny Sullivan drops back. Kevin Kogan not on the lead, but still up in this battle. Then Danny Sullivan, the gold and white car, and the red car of Scott Pruitt.
I think it's just obvious that Danny does have a fuel problem. He has to back off and try to conserve his fuel if he's even going to finish, because he just gave up that position with Michael there.
Let's go to the pits, Jackaroo.
Paul Page, they are not concerned about fuel. The reason that they made a 10-second stop was they took all the fuel that they had, but they said, hey, we've got plenty to go the amount of distance. Back then it was about 25 laps. So they may have backed out just a tad, but not on account of fuel consumption.
Chris Mears, Rick's wife, keeps score, talks on the communication system in the Penske team. Rick Mears has a little over 4 miles to go now to the finish of this race. Al Unser Jr. continues to hold on to 2nd place, a lap behind the leader. Then Michael Andretti, then Danny Sullivan, and then Emerson Fittipaldi. The contest is for 2nd place. 4 laps to go. Roger Penske knows that if he can only hold on his car, Rick Mears has this race wrapped up, and his team currently has 1st and 4th.
Well, for a long time, there's Michael coming out of the pits. He obviously had a little bit of fuel problem, too, and had to come back in. Remember, they wasn't too sure if they were going to stop, Paul.
Just came in, got a splash. Only 7 seconds where the wheels stopped, and Michael right back into the action. But it might be a costly stop for Michael.
And he certainly wasn't worried about his transmission. He was really giving the gas getting down the pits.
Well, if anyone on the Lolas were worried about transmissions, the worry may have gone away. It appears that whatever fixes the teams were able to work out have worked for this race. Rick Mears comes around to complete his 198th lap. He now has less than 2 miles to go. The last time he won on a mile was at Milwaukee last year. The Penske team picking up right where they left off as Rick Mears in that bright yellow Pennzoil car screams around this course a full lap ahead of everyone, which is what the racing world was saying just might happen.
And we don't have an indication from the way Rick's been going that he has any fuel problems, so I think we'll be able to see him get to the end with no problem, Paul.
The fight will be for second place as they come to the line. The white flag out for Rick Mears, as now he can almost coast to a finish in this race. But concentration will be on this fight. Al Unser Jr. being closed by Danny Sullivan. Danny Sullivan in that gold and white car, the right side of the screen. Sullivan closes in. Rick Mears comes off of the 4th turn, sees the checkered flag just ahead, and Rick Mears has won the Auto Works 200. And Danny Sullivan is right behind Al Unser Jr. as they come to the line. So Rick Mears, the Penske team, has won the race. The Pennzoil car triumphs. We'll be back with more from Phoenix and a conversation with our winner, Rick Mears, who has won at Phoenix.
Here in Victory Lane with the victorious Rick Mears, the Penske domination continues, Rick.
Thank you. Jack, I tell you, this Pennzoil car ran great all day. It never missed a beat. The thing just ran strong, and the guys just did a tremendous job in the pits and the stops. It just, I couldn't ask for anything more.
A close call, but nothing of major concern, was there?
No, not really. I mean, I killed the engine coming to pits, which is really smart, right? And but the guys got the thing turned around, got it fired up, and Chevy just never missed a beat all day.
Well, Team Penske continues as they make the road to Long Beach and then to Indianapolis, where this guy had won the Indianapolis 500. We'll be back with more right after this.
Well, we're back at Phoenix. The race has been won by Rick Mears. In fact, 10 of his last 11 IndyCar wins have come on oval tracks. We take a look at the unofficial results of this race. Unser Jr. finished up in second. We take a look through the entire field. The race was run at 126.11 miles an hour, not nearly a record. The record still belongs for the race to Roberto Guerrero. An hour and 35 minutes in 104-degree temperatures at Phoenix. And Rick Mears, the Penske organization, continue their dominance. The new PC-18 with its Chevrolet power is now the car to beat.